Shastra Jayate Suryavansha Jayate Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to our Monday night live stream Satsangha. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you. Before we officially begin, I just want to ask people in the audience if the sound quality is good. Please feel free to let me know because we are not using our microphone right now. And I would just be curious to know from people if the sound quality is still good the way it always has been. And if it is, then we will proceed. I'll give people a moment to answer because we're, of course, on a little bit of a time delay of about 20 seconds or so. But it's not logical for me to continue unless I know people can hear. Very, very important. Very good. Quality is excellent. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that, we will proceed. So again, I want to thank you all very much for being here. As people know, this is something that we do every week, every Monday at 7 p.m. Vedic Heartland time. That is what is usually called Central Time. And what we're going to be doing today is speaking about a topic that is quite different, actually, from other topics that we've covered in the past. And that is the Dharma of respecting our elders. Now, of course, many people today especially talk about this topic of, respecting our elders, and how it's something that is of quite importance, and how indeed this is something etiquette-wise which is lacking today. Everyone knows this, no one can deny this. Indeed, as far as etiquette, all etiquette is lacking today, which is a very unfortunate thing, because etiquette is one of the richnesses of what it means to be a human being in the world. You know, a lot of people think of etiquette either in this silly way of, etiquette is where you place your fork on the dining room table or something like that. Or else they tend to think of it as something that is an encumbrance, something that is kind of like chains on our freedom. And both views are wrong. First of all, etiquette is an extension of ethics. It's not quite ethics. It is an extension of ethics. That is, it is ethics as socially applied. That is what etiquette is. The other thing is that etiquette is not something that is meant to be restrictive and boring. On the contrary, you see very often when they today in the media, when they portray etiquette, again they'll portray a bunch of very stuffy people, just going through the motions of meaningless rules and regulations. That's not what is meant by etiquette. What is meant by etiquette is, to sum it up very, very succinctly, respect. Respect. Respect as a human being toward other human beings, for that matter, toward the gods, even in some cases toward animals. And giving that respect and receiving that respect. This is what is meant by etiquette. So etiquette is something that is very important, and done the right way and done sincerely. When you live in a society in which people are respecting one another and indeed extending those very intricate and very nice, very well thought out rules of etiquette, what ends up happening is that life itself becomes richer, it becomes more beautiful, it becomes more expressive in such a way that when it comes to interpersonal relationships between, and we'll just stick with human beings, interpersonal relationships between human beings, those relationships indeed become more intricate, more deeper, more beautiful, etc. This is what happens when we respect one another. Well, this is, of course, the traditional way of viewing reality and social relations between human beings, is that indeed we are to respect one another. Today, of course, that is in this part of the Kali Yuga that we're living in, roughly the last 30, 40, 50 years, all respect is gone. And the internet, of course, has exacerbated this infinite fold to the point where, of course, you'll see strangers, you'll see people, semi-friends, talking to each other on social media, and they'll communicate like animals. They'll communicate like they hate each other. They'll curse each other and just be very rude to each other, etc., etc. And then sadly, what I've seen, and it's always sad when I see this, but all of you have seen this, is when people take this crass internet culture and then transfer it into real life. They're having a conversation with someone and they think they're on the internet and they'll try to be rude. Well, of course, you do that with the wrong person and you'll be put in your place fast. So etiquette is something that is of extreme importance, as is respect. So indeed, what we're going to be looking at today is respect very specifically toward those who are elders. Not elderly, but elders. There's a very big difference between the two, and there is certainly a little bit of overlap between elders versus the elderly. So let me first of all define terms by talking about this. First of all, the elderly is just a general category that means anyone over a certain age, and that's arbitrary. It could be over 65 or whatever. That is an elderly individual. That's a little bit different from what we're talking about, and that is elders. You see, in any well-functioning group, society, tribe, nation, community, etc., you have elders. You have those individuals who, oh yes, as far as their age, they tend to be a little bit older, but what makes them elders is the fact that they are recognized as having wisdom. They are individuals, again, within that group, that community, who they are known to have been individuals who throughout their life they were wise. And now that they're older and ostensibly they're retired, so they don't have to focus so much on a job or anything like that, now they have the ability fully to share that wisdom with the individuals of that community, with the younger people, indeed, even people their same age or even older. Again, there's not an exact equation between being an elder and being someone who is aged. Indeed, a person can be a young person, but due to their wisdom, they can be considered to be an elder, and then vice versa. You can have someone who they're quite up there in years and they're a fool. You can have both. So indeed, it's important to understand that by elder does not mean necessarily elderly, but rather an individual who is wise. Now, we're going to be looking at several verses from this very, very wonderful scripture, Ushana Dharma Shastra. And as people have maybe seen, in recent weeks, we've been looking at quite a few of the Dharma Shastras. That's for personal reasons. That's because I've been rereading them recently in the last, maybe month or so. And I always find these works to be absolutely fascinating. This is a slew of literature, Vedic literature known as the Dharma Shastras. And this one, the Ushana Dharma Shastra, is only one of them. And what makes them interesting is the fact that they cover so many different topics. These are indeed the law books of Sanatana Dharma. Oh, but they go into so much more. They go into politics, into economics, into social structure. In many cases, as we've seen in the past, they will go into yoga, into meditation, into cosmology, etc., etc. Well, in this case, this is going to be a string of verses that talks about, indeed, why it is of importance and how we respect elders. But before I dive into these verses, just one more thing I want to say, and that is, why be respectful to elders to begin with? Well, first of all, as I said a moment ago, we should be respectful toward all good people. We're not respectful toward evil people, but if someone is a good person, whoever they are, we should be respectful. You should be respectful to your husband, to your wife, to your parents, and on and on and on. You should be respectful to whoever is the ruler of your nation and to priests, etc. But why very specifically the elders of society? Why is it of such importance to be respectful toward them? Let me speak about this from a temporal slash metaphysical perspective. And that is this. And this, truthfully, this one topic alone, I'm doing this as a little prefacorial aside, a little preface and aside to our talk. But in actuality, this part I could talk about for an hour. It's that important. When it comes to the idea of the ancients in relationship to history, all of the ancients, and when I say the ancients, I mean up until the Enlightenment era, up until roughly 300 years ago. Every culture, every civilization, every tribe, every people, every religion on the face of the earth, again, up until modernity, had the same idea. And that idea was very simply that the further back you go in time, with only very few exceptions, the better things were. Now, that changed roughly 300 years ago, again, with the Enlightenment era, and very specifically with Hegel and his approach to philosophy of history, where he turned this on its head, and his idea, and then later the idea of many Enlightenment individuals, I would scarcely call them intellectuals, as well as Marxism, etc., was then the idea of the opposite. That no, the further back you went, the stupider people were. Of course, anyone who has ever looked at ancient history knows how ridiculous that is. No, the further back you go, the more advanced things were qualitatively. You don't even have to go back to the time of Socrates. You can go back 50 years, and the culture was less crass, and people were more intelligent and were indeed more well-mannered and happier, etc., etc. But all that as an aside, understanding this now, let me speak about this one topic before we get into the verses for today. This being the case, that is, that the past, the further back you go, things were only better and better and better, that contained as knowledge within the framework of the psyche, of the human being. Now, when we look at the future, on the other hand, the future is an unknown. This being the case, it's impossible to grasp onto the future other than wishing and doing, but not in actuality, not as far as being. As far as grabbing on to that glory of the past, however, we have a bridge. And this is very much a physical bridge, a physical phenomenon that is here. It's called the elders of society. It's called our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents if they are still alive. It's called those individuals who maybe they've reached the age of 100 years old, but they remember World War II. Indeed, at one point, when I was alive, when I was earlier, I remember there still being alive individuals who fought in World War I. This being the case, the elders are individuals who serve as our bridge. They serve as an additional element to our memory, such that we can still we can still have that grip on the past in such a way that the glories of the past are still there with us, and we do not lose our heritage. So this is why having respect for elders is of such importance. It serves a very vital function, and that is this. If you forget your past, you forget who you are. And if you forget who you are, you have nothing. You have nothing if you don't know who you are. So this being the case, again, those individuals who are the elders of society, they are those individuals who they can serve as our eyes and ears to what was, and what was indeed a better time. Those individuals who can tell us about the 60s, and no, not the hippie 60s, the real 60s. When, again, people still respected each other and you still had neighborhoods, etc. You still had families intact, the real 60s. These are individuals who can tell us about the 70s. These are individuals who can tell us how they witnessed society itself becoming degenerate. Year after year after year after year. They're a witness, and they can educate us. They can teach us in such a way that we know from whence we came. And knowing from whence we came, we now have the power, we now have the ability to shape our future. So thus, when we talk about respecting the elders, this is not just some cute little sentiment. Oh, there's grandma there, yeah, so help her get out of the chair, because she's a little bit elderly. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about human beings, human living personalities who are alive now, who are our bridges to our ancestors. So thus, we must respect them and honor them and listen to them and do what we can to serve them. So all this being said, now let's go on to our verses from Ushana Dharma Shastra. And these are several verses in sequence. We're going to begin with chapter 1 and verse 28. And this verse proceeds in this way. Seeing an elderly person, one should get up and salute him or her with folded palms. One should not sit with the elders, nor should one quarrel with them on any account. Very nice. Let's go through this verse, and we're going to go through all these verses. We're going to go through these somewhat quick because I do want to save time for questions and answers after this is over. So, seeing an elderly person. So, when you are in the presence of someone who is indeed an elder, someone who is a little bit older and wise, etc., one should immediately get up. So, obviously, if you're seated somehow and one of these wonderful individuals enters the room, you get up. You don't sit there in a lazy way. You get up and you salute that individual. That is, you offer that person obeisances with folded palms. Now, this is the Vedic way. Indeed, by extension, this is the Hindu way. It's very nice how to this day, if an individual were to go, for example, to India, you will see such respect. Not always, because sadly, large parts of India have been aping the West, have been aping modernity, I should say, not so much the West, but modernity. So even in India, among Hindus and Hindu society, some of these customs are slowly being lost, but you can still see this there, where, there's an elder who comes into the room, people stand and they offer their obeisances. Indeed, for individuals who truly practice Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism very seriously, if their parents enter the room for the first time, they will bend down and touch their parents' feet and ask for blessings. So this is something that you still see. So that is what is being said here, is that indeed, when you see one of these elders, that is what you should do in respect. Now we go on. One should not sit with the elders. Interesting. This might sound both counterintuitive and a bit odd to individuals who would think that, well, wait a minute, would it not be respectful to actually sit with elders? Yes and no. The point is, you should not assume that you have the right to. If you see a group of elders and they're sitting there and they're having their own conversation, sipping a little bit of tea or something like this, you shouldn't be so arrogant that you just kind of sit next to them like they're your buddy. On the contrary, you have enough respect that you stand until you have eye contact with one of these elders, and then they invite you to sit. They will say, "Oh, come, please, have a seat." Then you sit. So the point is to not be arrogant, but to always be cognizant, to be aware of who these people are and how indeed you must respect them. Now let's go on. This next part is a given. Anyone should know this. Nor should one quarrel with them on any account. On any account. You know, when you respect someone, you don't quarrel with them. You don't pick fights. You don't nitpick. You know, try to have a one-upmanship. That's something children do. That's something even a lot of children actually, if you have good parents, that's bred out of them sooner rather than later. No, on the contrary. When you see someone who is an elder, just as you would with anyone else who you respect, you don't quarrel with them. Doesn't mean you can't disagree, but you disagree in a very respectful way. But on no account, in accordance with this verse, should you quarrel with someone who is considered to be an elder. Now let's go on to the next verse. And this is again chapter 1, but now verse 29. And this verse does not mince words, especially how it begins. Even for preserving his own life, one should not injure or speak ill of elderly persons. Even when endowed with other accomplishments, a person who injures elders goes downward. Very nice. So again, this does not mince words. This verse is explaining to us just how crucial it is that when we meet someone who is an elder, someone who they have proven themselves. This person is 60, 70, 80 years old, and they have proven themselves all of their life to have been a good and wise person, someone who worked hard and they supported their family and they raised their children right, etc., etc. This is how we are to treat them. So this verse begins, even for preserving his own life. And we're to take this seriously. if you're a good person innately, and not everyone is, some people, they make themselves good people. They train themselves to be good people. But then there is a somewhat of a minority of good people who they are innately good. They are individuals who they're just born good. They are good within. When you are such an individual, in your mind, there's no such thing as doing the wrong thing. That would be like dying. There's no such thing as harming someone without cause. There's no such thing as being disrespectful to good people. There's no such thing as abusing the innocent, etc., etc. For someone who is inherently good, it is the case that it doesn't even cross your mind that you would do something to harm someone. Well, that's what this little clause is saying. Even for preserving your own life, one should not injure or speak ill of elderly persons. So again, this is a given. It doesn't require a lot of commentary, of purport. You should not injure an elderly person. Oh my Lord, that would be horrific. That here is someone who they've lived a full life, maybe they're 70 years old, 75 years old, and you're going to physically injure them? No, that's something that's inconceivable. I can't even say on this live stream what should happen to such a person legally. But no, there's no such thing as harming such an individual. They lived a full life. At this point, they're older. They're not physically as strong, and you're going to go out of your way to harm that person? No. No. All of society should descend upon you and chastise you for this, and all of society would do such a thing. Nor should you speak ill of elderly persons. Indeed, you shouldn't insult someone who is an elder. You shouldn't do anything, even verbally, to abuse them in any way. So either physically or verbally, you must not abuse the elderly in any way whatsoever. Now let's go on. Even when endowed with other accomplishments. And let me explain this. This is just a launching point for then what is going to be the last clause of this verse. What this is saying is, even if you think you are great and you've accomplished a lot in this life, even if you have a lot of other accomplishments. So it's setting up what is about to come next. So even if you're endowed with other accomplishments, a person who injures elders goes downward. And it's interesting how it states it in this way, in this very general sort of way. If you are the sort of individual who you will injure those who are elders, those who are elderly, doesn't matter what other good qualities you have. Doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you're good looking, doesn't matter if you've done other nice things in charity, doesn't matter if you think you're a nice person in your own mind, it doesn't matter. If you are to perform such a heinous act as to harm elders, then what happens is, and again it's interesting, such an individual goes downward. What is meant by such a thing? Well, it means karmically, certainly, you will accrue tremendously bad karma, which you may not care about now, but the karma hits you when you're not aware of it. And you will care at the time. That's how karma works 100% of the time. For those individuals who try to flick their thumb at karma and say, well, karma, whatever, I'll take my punishment. No, you won't, actually. You won't know that the punishment is even coming when it comes. That's the nature of karma. It's a perfect system. But also it means, of course, that, yes, such individuals are destined for patrala, for the hellish regions. But more than this, as an actual human person situated within the material world, what this means is that you are denigrating yourself in such a way that your very consciousness itself will be denigrated, and thus you will, in who you are, go downward. In other words, the quality of your life will be terrible, and you will have produced this if indeed you abuse those who are elders. So yes, we are to be extremely respectful toward elderly individuals. Now let's go on to the next verse, and this is again chapter 1, but now verse 30. And this verse proceeds in this way. Of all elderly persons, 5 types are to be particularly adored. And now it gives the list. The father, the mother, the spiritual guide, that is the guru, the teacher, and the priest. Of these, the first three are the foremost. And of those three, a mother is to be particularly adored. So very nice, very, very nice verse. And now it gets to be very technical, but also in a very logical, very rational, reasonable sort of way. So now what this verse is saying is that indeed, when we talk about the elderly or elders, we're talking about a very general group of individuals. And, like with other general groups, there's diversity that's there. Well, what this verse is now saying is that of all of these elderly individuals, there are 5 types, 5 kinds specifically, that especially deserve our, and what's interesting about this verse, what is the wording that is used? Not just respect, they should be adored. Adoration, we should have devotion toward them. What's another word for this? Love. Love. There are 5 kinds specifically that are to be loved, not merely respected, but loved. You can respect a tornado. You're not going to love a tornado. So these 5 sorts of elderly individuals are to be respected and adored and loved. Now let's go through this. It lists them, and some of these are, again, very self-explanatory, but a few I'll explain. The father, the mother, so in other words, the parents. The parents are, by definition, if they are your parents, they are your elders. Your parents are not going to be younger than you. That's an absolute logical impossibility. So yes, the mother and the father, so parents are to be adored. The spiritual guide, i.e. the guru. The guru is an individual who, generally speaking, even as far as age, they tend to be a little bit older than the typical individual. Not always. And here we get back to what I was saying before, that there's a difference between elder versus elderly. A person can be an elder without being elderly. So, for example, I have students, I have initiated disciples who are older than me. In fact, in some cases, 20 or more years older than me, actually. But yet, our relationship is such that I am their elder and they have respect toward me. I obviously, of course, respect them as well. But as far as the hierarchy of things, even though they are chronologically, as far as their age, older than me, because I am the guru or the acharya, I am considered to be above them. So again, this is why we're talking more about elders than elderly. So the guru is one of these categories of people. The teacher. Now the teacher is different from the guru. Not every guru is a teacher, not every teacher is a guru. What is meant by the teacher is, what is meant by that word in English in common parlance in the Western world. You go to kindergarten, you go to high school, you go to college, university, etc. That individual who is teaching you, whatever the topic is, that is someone who you are to respect as an elder. Now, again, in most cases, you are talking about someone who is chronologically older than you, but more than that, it's the weight of their knowledge that you are respecting. So indeed, sometimes an older student will go back to college, they could be 40 or 50, and they just decide, let me take a few college classes, and their professor might be 35. Well, you still respect this individual as an elder, and in this case, not just due to the chronology of age, but due to the fact that, they have tremendous knowledge, and that is what you're respecting. And then finally, the priest. The priest, so an individual who is a brahmana. That is what is meant by this. The brahmana is someone who you are to respect. And here especially, we see how this transcends age. Because brahmanas are of every age. A brahmana can be someone who's 20 years old. They can be 100 years old. Regardless of this, if you are not a brahmana, you are to respect the brahmanas. You are to respect the priests. Even if you're 70 and the brahmana that you're encountering is 20, you are to respect that individual. And again, why? Due to the weight, in this case, of their knowledge, but also their spiritual attainment. Also their spiritual attainment. The fact that qualitatively they are made, one could say, of a finer substance than you. They are purely sattvic in every way. And it's for this reason that you are to see them as an elder, even if you're 30 years older than them. If they are a brahmana, a priest, you respect them. Now let's go on. Here it becomes especially interesting. where it says that of these, the first three are foremost. So again, father, mother, and guru. But then there's a caveat here. And of those three, a mother is to be particularly and what? Adored. Respected? Yes, absolutely. And adored and loved. Now, why is this the case? Oh, am I setting myself up for a 3-hour talk now, a 3-hour lecture? Do I really need to explain why it is that we are to respect our mother above pretty much all beings? You know, our mother is everything, especially if you have a good mother. And of course, I always have to have this caveat because this is 2023, and I know that society has broken down, the family has broken down, family relations have broken down. Not everyone has the best mother, not everyone has the best father, etc., etc. I know. I encounter this very sad reality all the time when I have to deal with so many of my students. I know that parents are not perfect today. Indeed, some of them are terrible, actually. But we're talking about, of course, ideal circumstances where you have a truly wonderful, loving mother who has her act together and she knows what she's doing and she is truly giving of herself to raise her child in the right way, to make sure that that child is strong and wonderful in every way, physically healthy, morally someone who is wonderful, and on and on and on. When you have such a mother, you are especially to have respect and adoration for such a woman. You are to understand that this mother is everything for me because from the moment I was born, indeed from before I was born, up until when? It doesn't end. Until she finally sadly leaves the world, leaves the planet. For all that time, she was my support. She was the person who loved me beyond any other person. And for that reason, understanding this, yes, we are to love our mother when we can. So let's go on. We will go now to the next verse, which is again chapter 1, but now we're looking at verse 31. And again, now it breaks this down in a very scientific way even more. One who gives habitation even for a day, one who gives instructions even for a moment, the eldest brother, the protector, and the husband, in the case of a woman, are the 5 gurus, that is, elderly persons worthy of respect. So very interesting. Again, 5. It gives 5 examples of individuals who are elders. And more, very specifically here, not just elders, again, in a more general sense, but very specifically, these individuals are to be seen as the guru, as the spiritual guide. Now, it's interesting. Let me talk about this just for a moment as an aside. The science of guru, Sri Guru Tattva. There's an actual term for this. Sri Guru Tattva means the science of what it means to be a guru. And indeed, it is a science. When it comes to the idea of guru, what a guru is many things. Again, in the most generic sense, you could see an individual who is an expert in a specific field who can teach you that field. That person is a guru. So the examples that I give all the time, an individual who is a martial arts master and instructor. Oh, that's a guru. That's an individual who we are to respect as a guru. But is this a spiritual guru? No, not necessarily. It might be. It might be that there's a correspondence between the two, but very often not. That person can teach us martial arts, but not necessarily teach us how to have self-realization and God consciousness. So this is the most generic sense in which we have this term guru. And then I'm not going to talk about the entire science of guru now, stretching all the way up to the spiritual guru, the acharya, an individual who is there to help us to reach the highest goal of life. And that is, again, self-realization and God consciousness. But more, when it comes to, let me say, the stereotype of the guru, of course, what do we tend to think? Oh, the guru is an individual who indeed has reached a certain age and they look a certain way. You know, they may be dressed like I am today. They dress a certain way, etc. And that is the individual who is the official guru. Well, interestingly, the Vedic scriptures have made this clear, not just in this verse. I personally have read have read this same instruction in many, many different verses in different scriptures as well. That other individuals in daily life also, in a way, fulfill the role of the guru, ideally speaking. In other words, if they truly are individuals who they are wise, they are worthy of respect, they themselves are spiritual beings, we are to see these people as also, in a way, our guru, guides who will help us both materially but also spiritually. So let's now go through this. These are the 5 different kinds. So, first of all, one who gives habitation even for a day. How interesting. This is part of guest host etiquette in all Indo-European culture and religion. And that means stretching from Ireland to the Philippines and everything in between. That is most of the vast majority of the world in the past. This was something that was recognized as being of great importance. That is the etiquette that is there between a host and a guest. And that is that there is a certain interplay of etiquette that then occurs when you are a guest in someone's home, whether you're visiting or you're spending the night. So, with that understanding, that is what is being said here. An individual who gives you habitation, that is, they invite you into their home, even if it's just for one day, you are to respect that person as if they are your guru. You are to listen to them very humbly, and indeed, you are to respect that individual. So, again, guest host etiquette is something that is very, very important. Let's go on to the second one now. One who gives instructions even for a moment. Indeed, even my guru said this, any guru worth his salt has said this in the past, that when you learn something of true value, not just anything, but of true value from someone, it could be someone who you just met them on the street, you barely even know who this person is, but they give you some instruction that makes you really think, and you know, oh my Lord, this is going to be of value, I'm going to remember this. That person is, for that moment, that person is like unto a guru. And you are to, at least in your mind, thank them, but then verbally you are to thank them as well. In your mind you are to respect them, and then verbally you are to thank them for giving you that instruction. Let's go on. The eldest brother. Indeed, this is the idea of filial piety. This is something that you find, again, in all ancient Indo-European cultures. You find this in China among Confucianism and Taoists as well. And that is the idea that even within family, there is a hierarchy. People are not equal. This was not an idea that any human being in the ancient world, unless they were a little crazy or there was something wrong with them, the idea that all human beings are radically equal, this was not an idea that crossed anyone's mind in the ancient world. Indeed, in the world in general, up until just a few hundred years ago, again, with the birth of the so-called Enlightenment era. So even within family, there is hierarchy. And among those individuals who are not the parents, that is all the siblings, the eldest is to be considered almost like a guru. And why is this the case? Just very practically, they have been around longer, they do have more experience, they do have more wisdom, they've seen more of the world. This being the case, if you have a brother who is even 18 and you're 8, oh, you have reverence for that brother, and you listen to what that brother is going to say to you, because that brother doesn't want to harm you. You're his brother. He wants to give you advice that will help you to make it in this world and to thrive in this world. Let's go on. The protector. Now, this is a very general idea, the protector. Any individual who you're in trouble and indeed they save you, they give you protection. And it can be either real, an actual physical situation, physical altercation or something like this, or it can be that nothing has actually even happened in any way, but indeed they're giving you protection. You're somewhere in a very, very unsafe neighborhood, and you're feeling very, very threatened, and you decide to go into some grocery store, and you'll even say to the person who's there in the grocery store, oh, yeah, sorry to come in like this. I just was feeling very unsafe, and is it okay? I'll even buy something, but is it all right? I just wanted to spend like a few minutes here before I then go on home. And the person will say, oh, no problem. Yes, please stay as long as you want. that person is to be seen as a guru. They are to be seen as someone who you are now under their wing. You are now under their protection. It can be something as simple as that, or it can be indeed a warrior who is protecting you. It can be someone who is just a friend or anybody who is there protecting you. That person is to be seen as a guru. And then finally, the husband in the case of the woman. Now, this might sound somewhat controversial, but it should not. What is meant by this is several things. First of all, we have to go back to the idea of protector. There's no way around this. Generally speaking, men tend to be a little bit stronger, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more protective than the women in the relationship. There's nothing bad about this. This is simply the way of nature. This being the case, indeed, the husband is seen as generally the protector of the wife. But more than this, indeed, the husband is an individual who it is his duty to guide the family. And not just the wife, not just the woman as is said here, but the children as well, the entire family. Now, does this mean that this works 100% of the time? Of course not. Can we point to families where the husband, the man, the father is an idiot? Of course, and especially today. Again, especially today when all rules and regulations have been thrown out. There aren't strong families. People have not been raised in accordance with traditional culture, etc., etc. So, of course, we see many instances where the husband is not someone who's qualified. Well, obviously, what is being spoken of here is indeed a husband who is not just a husband, but someone who is qualified, someone who actually is serving as a perfect husband, a wonderful husband. So such an individual is to be seen as a guru and thus given respect. So these are indeed the 5 gurus. Now let's go on to the very last of these verses before we do questions and answers. And the last of these verses is, and again, we're still in chapter 1, and this is verse 32, and this is the last. With one's best personal exertion. I don't do this very often. I'm going to pause there before I even finish, and I'm going to repeat this. With one's best personal exertion. These 5 should be adored by one seeking his own well-being, even to the point of the renouncement of his own life. So again, this ends with a very heavy verse. This verse is based. To quote the Chans. This is what the Vedic literature is like. It doesn't play games with you. It doesn't play games. It tells you the truth. So now let's go through this. With one's best personal exertion. So kind of half-heartedly, kind of in a lazy way, kind of, I guess I have time. No. With one's best personal exertion. In other words, giving of yourself in such a way that you are not only respecting the elders, you're respecting yourself. And you're showing that by giving your best effort. So with one's best personal exertion. I'm still not finished talking about this. In everything that we do spiritually, indeed, in everything that we do that is anything of importance, we are a construction worker. We're going to build a house for someone. You give it your best personal exertion. You are indeed someone who is spiritual. You're someone who, I want to know God, I want to know the spiritual, blah, 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 as is done by so many people today. How many of those individuals, however, do indeed give it their very best personal exertion in every way imaginable, intellectually, putting their body on the line, taking the time to read, to study, to sit, to do sadhana, not for a minute, but for a long period of time, who have patience, who develop all these inner qualities that must be there if an individual is indeed to make progress spiritually. That is, they have to be courageous. That is, they have to be disciplined, and on and on and on. This is what is meant by one's best personal exertion. So now that we get this, now let's go on. So with that best personal exertion, these 5, that is, these 5 gurus, should be adored by one seeking his own well-being. So if indeed you are seeking your own well-being, what does this mean? Again, in every way. In every way. You see, again, another aside. This is very important. The yogi, the spiritual individual, is someone who they want their own well-being spiritually. Oh, yes. Only spiritually? No. They want their own well-being in every way. Indeed, if you meet someone who claims to be spiritual and physically they're out of shape, intellectually they couldn't tell you anything about the tradition they're following, and on and on. In other words, you find someone who is not balanced in this way. You're finding someone who does not know what they're doing spiritually even. No, indeed, an individual who is truly a spiritual stalwart is an individual who they have developed themselves in every way. That means they've developed their intellect, they've developed their body, they have developed themselves certainly spiritually, intellectually, in every way imaginable. This is what we're talking about. That is what is meant by this, by one's best personal exertion. So, these 5 individuals should be adored by seeking one's own well-being. So, this being the case, wanting this indeed full-fledged well-being in a very balanced, harmonious sort of way, we offer our adoration, that is, our love, to these 5 gurus. Now, this is indeed where it gets intense, even to the point of the renouncement of his own life. So, in other words, again, you claim to be someone who is seriously spiritual. Oh, how cute. You decide to start your own YouTube channel and blather your personal realizations upon the world. No. You're someone who you claim to truly be an individual who has given yourself fully to spirituality, then you must have the ability indeed to give yourself in adoration to these gurus and more by extension, to do the right thing in every way spiritually to the point where even if it means the sacrificing of your own life, at least theoretically, nothing else means more to you than having spiritual success. So that's what is meant by this. That indeed, at one time in the past, if you read the history hagiographies, so-called, if you read the storylines of great sages and saints and yogis of the past, what you will see are not the new age grifters of today. What you will see are individuals 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, individuals who were willing to give of themselves almost to the point of death to know that which is the highest. They would sacrifice themselves. They would give everything away, give away their wealth. You have someone like St. Francis. Very interesting story. I point to him once in a while, even though he's not even in the Vedic tradition. He was a Christian mystic. But in the Vedic tradition, there are 1,000, tens of thousands of examples like this. I like to use him because he's someone who especially Westerners can relate to. Born rich, born wealthy. He could have done anything with his life. He was born practically a prince. Not quite. He wasn't royalty, but his family were so influential, so wealthy, he could have done anything. But he wanted to know God to the point where he purposefully put himself in poverty and traversed the lengths and breadths of Europe all the way into the Middle East barefoot to know God. This is what is meant by even to the point of renouncing his own life. So this is what it means to be truly someone who is on fire for God. Now, does it mean you have to give your life? No, of course not. Does it mean you have to go to such extremes? No. The point is, if you had to, you're willing to. That's all that's meant. Doesn't mean that, oh, you can't know God unless you renounce all your wealth and traverse the streets barefoot and living in poverty. No, that's not the point. The point is that in your mind, if that is indeed the sacrifice that you needed to make to know God, you would do it. And that is the point. So what to speak of knowing God? In this case, we're talking about having adoration toward these 5 types of gurus. Indeed. Do we understand now how indeed having respect and indeed adoration for our elders is something that, in accordance with the Vedic scriptures, it's something that we are to do seriously, that we are to take seriously. So thus, let me make this very practical. This is indeed 2023. I have an audience of people in accordance with our latest statistics, approximately 140 nations throughout the world. That's how many people have seen our videos. Let me make this very practical. What this means is that you are to have a new and deeper relationship with those individuals in your life who are elders, who you have seen, who you can recognize as individuals who are precisely what we have described during this live stream. Individuals who, no, it's not just that they're old. Oh, elderly people, old people should always be respected. But no, we're talking especially about elders, individuals who they are wise, they have lived good lives that they are proud of, lives where when they leave this world, they can leave this world knowing that they did something wonderful in this world and they've left behind something wonderful, at the very least in the form of their own family and children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We're talking about such individuals who are noble individuals. If you know anyone like this in your life, now especially go out of your way to talk to them. Go out of your way to be respectful toward them. Go out of your way to listen to them. Ask them questions. Ask them what the world was like 60 and 70 years ago when it was still relatively sane. They are eyewitnesses. They will tell you. Don't listen to the media. Listen to the eyewitnesses who were there. Always remember, Hollywood is not history. Hollywood is not history. Our elders are history. They are our bridge to the past. So in this way, I would ask you very, very personally, find these people in your life, whether they're relatives or just people you know. They don't have to be related to you genetically. Find such individuals and indeed go out of your way to speak with them and offer your humble obeisances to them. Very good. So with that, I thank you very much for listening to my discourse on the Dharma of respecting one's elders. And with that, I would like to signal if anyone would like to ask any questions, now is the time to please feel free to ask those questions. Very nice. Just as an aside, as the questions are coming in, I wanted to let people know that it's very nice. I have 5 of my students here in the temple with me right now, actually. And I'm speaking to you from the temple room, not my office. This is something that we may start doing more and more in the future. But I'm very, very fortunate to be surrounded by some of the world's most truly wondrous individuals. And I don't say that lightly. Ah, very good. Here's a very nice question. Alex Tremo del Norte, and it is greetings and thanks for making Dharma available to everyone. My pleasure. And the question is, why are gurus often referred to as Guru Deva, Guru Devas? Very nice. Yes, indeed. There are many different, let's say, ways in which you can address the Guru. One of these is Guru Maharaja, another one is Guru Deva, and there are others as well. As far as Guru Deva, very specifically, this is what this term means. Deva is a god, one of the gods. So indeed, the gods are known as devas because the gods are beings of light. If you were to encounter a god, the first thing that would happen is you wouldn't be able to see the god directly. You would see the light before the god striking you. These are beings who are literally made of light, the gods. So what is interesting is the guru, being an individual who is an enlightened being, being an individual who is purely spiritual, is considered to be among the gods, and indeed it says in several places in the scriptures, above even the gods. The reason why this is the case is because the gods are the gods because they are Atmans who had good karma. It means they were pious people. It means that they were ethical people, that they were good people. It means that they probably did a lot of yajna, of ritual, etc., and they became reincarnated in such a way that they became a god. Now, a guru, on the other hand, is an individual who is purely spiritual. They are an individual who they didn't do anything to try to become a god. Indeed, they have no interest in becoming a god. They want to simply know God, who is above even all the gods. This being the case, the quality of such an individual is above that of even the gods. Indeed, Prabhupada said this many, many times, and this is written in other Vedic scriptures. So Guru Deva basically is saying, oh, the guru who is like unto a god or even above the gods. So that is what is meant by that. Very good. Very nice. Give me just a few moments, please. And I have to say, today I'm not going to be able to answer everyone's questions just due to lack of time. And I do want to try to end somewhat on time today. So if I'm skipping your question, please don't take offense. I just can't answer them all. But give me a moment as I look at the rest of these questions. Very good. Sundarju, here is a very nice question. Namaste, Acharyaji. Glad to watch you live for once. I am European and it's the middle of the night. Well, I'm very, very happy that you could make it. We have devotees of the ISDS in pretty much every single nation of Europe. So I'd be interested to know what nation you're in. And you ask, is it disrespectful to recite the mantra during mundane tasks like taking out the garbage? And let me answer that directly, actually. It is not. It is not considered to be in any way disrespectful to recite any sacred mantra if you're doing mundane things. Now, I need to have a little stipulation here. When reciting the mantra, when doing mundane things, this is not considered to be dhyana per se. In other words, it is not meditation in and of itself. It's meditative, but it's not meditation as in one's direct sadhana, one's direct spiritual practice. Now, with that understanding that, oh yes, you can be, chopping potatoes, you can be doing something, you can be painting a wall, and in your mind or even out loud, you're saying mantra. No, this is a good thing to do, actually. Again, just as long as you understand that it's not dhyana per se, but at the same time, you are transcendentalizing your experience, even if it is a mundane experience. So, yes, it is perfectly fine indeed to say mantra as long as you say it with reverence, not just kind of, in a wishy washy sort of way, not paying 100%, not paying too much attention. But yes, as long as you're saying the mantra in a respectful manner, you can say mantra as you're doing other things. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. And again, I'm skipping questions just because of lack of time. I'm not going to be taking too many more, maybe 2 more questions at the most. Nice. Here's a comment, actually, a very nice comment from Vedic Heartland, and it is Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. Thank you for explaining these verses. I thought I was respectful to elders, but I see there is still work to do. I'll try my best to adhere to all of the pointers mentioned. Very nice. Thank you for that comment. And let me say, I'm guessing that when people attend our live streams, not just with this specific topic, but whatever is the topic that we're discussing, a lot of people probably have that same feeling that, oh, I could be doing a lot better. But that's a good thing, actually, because it then spurs you on to indeed do better. We can always do better with every good thing that we're doing. So please don't feel bad. On the contrary, just always strive to do better in every way. And give me a moment as I read a few more of these questions. Very good. Here is a question that I am going to answer because it has to do very directly with what we were just talking about, actually. And this is from Inspirational Mindset. And it is Namaste Sri Dharma. Thank you so much for this great talk. I wish to ask, how should sincere followers of Dharma cope with corrupt parents, elders, uh, and lads, I believe it is, that use force to bully us to respect them? Yes, again, I kind of purposefully covered this a little bit, but let me go a little bit deeper. Things are not the same today as they were 50, 60, 100 years ago, etc. What to speak of 5,000 years ago. To the point where, indeed, with many of these verses, when it talks about, respecting our family, respecting parents, respecting mother, father, etc., again, we have to keep in mind that these verses are talking about an individual living in and operating in a fully functioning Vedic, i.e., perfect society. And this being the case, the chances that one's parents will not be good people are diminished almost infinitely. But that's not where we're living today. We're living in 2023. We're living in a society. It's sad how many people don't realize this. Some people do. And increasingly, more and more and more people by the millions are realizing this. We're not living in a society. I don't know if you're aware of this. We're living in the remnants of what was a society. We're living in an interregnum. We're living indeed in a dark period right now where the family has been destroyed, where everyone's taking drugs, everyone's an alcoholic, everyone fights with each other, cheats on each other, etc., etc., etc. There are so many pressures on the family, then economic pressures, etc., to the point where, indeed, what we've seen is that there is tremendous dysfunction even within families. So sometimes it is the case that, yeah, our mother was not the best, our father was not the best, etc. And, we are to understand these verses in relation to this, in the light of this. So as you ask this, let me just read this again. You asked specifically about individuals in the family who try to bully us to respect them. Indeed, if an individual is worthy of respect, then they don't have to bully people to respect them. So what does this mean? This means that you can still respect such individuals who have bullied you, but you respect them from afar. Especially if you're an adult, now as an adult, you seek good association. You seek the association of individuals who you can truly respect fully, not just officially that, oh yes, these are my parents, but they were terrible people. Again, you still respect them, but from afar. You now create your own life that is a life steeped in goodness and health. And more, you surround yourself with such individuals. As I've said, I've had to help, I've had to counsel so many at this point, hundreds and thousands actually, of individuals who, yes, they came from broken families. They came from families that had every problem imaginable. And what do? You don't give up. You understand that there are good people out there, and even if your own biological family had challenges, who is our true family? Those of us who are Vaishnavas. Those individuals who are our true family are those individuals who they may not necessarily be biologically, genetically connected to us in any way, but they are individuals who spiritually we are on the exact same page. We meet these people and immediately, almost upon first meeting them, we recognize them as, this is my true brother, this is my true sister, this is my true family. And why? Because inwardly we are the same. That's family. And this is why I say to such individuals today, and this is why we have the ISDS. The ISDS is not a money-making enterprise. It's not a business. It's not like these other New Age con artists. No, the ISDS exists for many important reasons, but one of which is this: to indeed provide that spiritual family today, in this day and age, for those individuals who they themselves didn't have real family, and they wanted it so badly. So, indeed, I don't know how involved you are in the ISDS, in our Discord server, etc. But I would ask that you please be involved, because what you will find here are people who inwardly, in who they are inherently, they are what you have always strived for in wanting true family. So I hope that's helpful. Very good. And I will see if I can maybe take one more question, so please give me a moment. Hmm. Yes, Om Namo Narayanaya. Namaste. I'm very happy that you're here. I know it's late for you also in Europe. Namaste, Sri Acharya. Can you recommend a work by an authentic guru that you would highly recommend for us to read, yet you don't often mention? Yes, Sri Guru and His Grace, written by Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Swami Maharaj. He is one of my gurus. He is one of my primary gurus who I took initiation from twice in India. And this book by him, called Sri Guru and His Grace, is a book that I rarely mention, actually, but it was one of the first books that I read by him, and it is a powerful book. It explains very deeply, in a very personal sort of way, what is the nature of Guru and how we are to understand who is the Guru. And it's interesting, when I say personal, I mean this quite literally. My guru in this book, he goes very deeply into what is the mood, what is the internal state of this person who is there before you, who you are calling your guru, and not forgetting the fact that indeed that individual is a person. He is a Vaishnava. He is someone who he has his own relationship with Krishna, with God, in such a way that when we understand this, we now have the ability, even more so, to enter into the mood of the Guru and thus understand him qualitatively in a much, much better way, and thus be even more open to his instruction. So, Sri Guru and His Grace. This is a book that I would recommend. Very good. Wonderful. Well, with that, it is 8:08 Vedic Heartland time. So I'm going to stop here for now. And just another little aside for those who don't know, what in the world is he talking about, Vedic Heartland time? Uh, I and my other students who are here, and many who couldn't make it tonight, we are living in the Vedic Heartland. We are living in Omaha, Nebraska. And for people who know this, we have something, the ISDS, called the Vedic Heartland Initiative, where we are encouraging sincere followers of the ISDS, not just anyone. We're not a pan-Hindu organization. No, we are Vaishnavas, we are Sri Vaishnavas, and we follow Sanatana Dharma very authentically. If you are a follower of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, we are encouraging such individuals to come here, to move here, and be part of what will be, in the very near future, the most dynamic Vedic community on the face of the earth, and the most dynamic Vedic community that has existed in a very long time historically, stretching back to indeed the Vedic era. So this is why I say Vedic Heartland time. I'm not the person who coined that phrase. I forget who it is, but it was one of my students, and I grabbed onto it immediately. So Central Time. Central Time is Vedic Heartland time. So with that, it's now 8:10 Vedic Heartland time. So I'm going to end here. And again, as always, I thank you so much for being here. Before I actually end, just a few very quick announcements. First of all, if you have not yet done so, please consider joining our Discord server. And I haven't looked, but I'm sure people have put the URL for that in the chat. If you are sincere, if you want to know more about Sanatana Dharma, again, in its full authenticity, please feel free to join our Discord server, and you'll see it's a very amazing, special place. We have many, 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 many hundreds of individuals who are on there who are sincere, who are wise, and if you go there with humility, and only if you go there with humility and sincerity, and with an open mind and to learn, my students who are on there, oh, they will embrace you and be your friend. I can't even tell you how many friendships, indeed more than friendships, how many, let's say, partnerships and even marriages have occurred as a result of our Discord server, actually. But please feel free to join that. Again, I'm sure the link is in the chat. The other thing I want to say is please consider donating to the ISDS. We have a nonprofit religious movement, and that's exactly what it is. If you look at the chat, you'll see that pinned to the very top, there is a URL by which you can go to that URL and donate. You can donate. You can donate $1. You can donate $100, $1,000, $1,000,000. Whatever it is that you can donate, please help us to take this message that you just heard today and to magnify it 10,000-fold, so that this message of Sanatana Dharma can be heard by every sincere sentient being on the planet. And with that, again, our website itself is dharmacentral.com. Please feel free to go there if you want to see our books, a beautiful mantra meditation album that we have available, and many, many, many more resources if you want to deepen your knowledge of Sanatana Dharma. With that, once again, I thank you all very much for being here with me. Join me next Monday. As long as we can help it, we try to be here every single Monday for this live stream. Please join us again next Monday. Namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Suravangsha Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma. Victory to the Dharma nation. Victory to the solar dynasty from whence arises the earth's true rulers. Evam bhavatu. May such victory be so. And such victory shall be so. And with that, everyone, I ask you all that between now and the next time that we get together, I ask you that you please in every way take very good care of yourselves.